The autumn rain had just started when Michael pulled his car into the driveway. The small house, standing at the edge of the town, looked warm with its yellow lights glowing behind the curtains. He switched off the engine, sat still for a moment, and listened to the sound of raindrops drumming on the roof. Inside, he knew, waited Anna, his wife, and her daughter from her first marriage, Emily. Michael had been married to Anna for only a year, and though things between them were steady, his relationship with Emily was far more complicated. She was 19 now, standing right on the fragile border between teenage stubbornness and the first signs of adulthood. Their conversations rarely went beyond polite greetings, but he noticed how her eyes lingered on him sometimes, as if she were trying to figure him out, weigh him, understand what kind of man her mother had chosen. When he entered, Anna was in the kitchen. Emily sat on the couch, her knees drawn up, a book in her hands. She barely looked up when he stepped in, but Michael caught a glimpse of her faint smile before she hid behind the pages. "Long day?" Anna asked, pouring him tea. "The usual," he replied, loosening his tie. "How is everything here?" Anna shrugged, and her voice turned casual, quiet. "Emily's been studying all day." Michael glanced at the girl again. She wasn't reading anymore. Her eyes were fixed on the rain outside the window. The dim light of the lamp painted her face in soft amber tones, and for the first time he noticed how much she resembled her mother when they had first met. The evening went by as usual. A quick dinner, quiet chatter, and then everyone drifted to their rooms. But Michael couldn't sleep. The sound of rain outside made the house feel smaller, more intimate, as if the walls themselves leaned closer. At some point, he heard soft footsteps in the hallway. He opened his door slightly and saw Emily moving toward the kitchen. She wore a loose sweater, her hair falling freely over her shoulders. Michael hesitated but followed. She stood by the window, holding a glass of water, looking at the rain as if it told her a secret no one else could hear. When she noticed him, she didn't look startled. Instead, she tilted her head and said quietly, "Can't sleep either?" Her voice was calm, but something in it lingered, like an unspoken thought. Michael joined her at the window, keeping a respectful distance. "The rain," he said. "It makes me restless." Emily smiled faintly. "Me too." For a moment, they just stood there, side by side, watching the endless streams of water race down the glass. It was nothing unusual, and yet the silence felt heavier than words. Michael sensed the shift in the air, the kind of subtle change no one speaks about, but both people feel. The following days unfolded quietly. Michael settled deeper into his routine, work in the city, long drives back home, evenings filled with the soft rhythm of domestic life. Yet, after that night in the kitchen, something had shifted. It wasn't what Emily said, it was the way she said it. That calm, almost knowing tone, as if she were older than her years. Michael couldn't forget it. One evening, Anna was late at work, and the house was unusually silent when Michael came back. Emily was in the living room, headphones around her neck, typing something on her laptop. "Hey," she said without lifting her eyes. "Hey," he replied, loosening his jacket. "No dinner yet?" "Mom said she'd be late." "I was thinking of making pasta." Michael paused. The idea of cooking together felt oddly domestic, intimate in its simplicity. "Mind if I help?" Emily finally looked at him, her lips curving into a half-smile. "Sure. Just don't burn the kitchen." They worked side by side, chopping vegetables, boiling water, and stirring sauce. At first, their conversation stayed light, college plans, his job, little everyday details. But as the minutes passed, the silence between them became comfortable, almost natural. At one point, while reaching for the same spice jar, their hands brushed. Emily didn't pull away immediately. Instead, She let her fingers linger for just a second longer than necessary. A fleeting contact, so small it could have been nothing. But Michael noticed. Dinner was simple but warm. They ate together at the table, the rain tapping softly against the window once more. "Not bad," Michael said after tasting the pasta. Emily gave him a mock-serious look. "That's high praise, coming from you." He chuckled. For the first time since becoming part of this household, he felt something resembling ease between them. Later, when Anna finally came home, she found them laughing over some silly story from Michael's office. She looked surprised but pleased. "I'm glad you two are getting along," she said, setting her bag down. Emily only shrugged, though her eyes flicked toward Michael with something unreadable. That night, Michael sat awake in his study, pretending to read. But the book blurred before his eyes. Instead, his mind replayed small moments: Emily's smile in the kitchen, the warmth of her hand, the way she listened when he spoke as if every word mattered. He knew he shouldn't think too much of it. She was Anna's daughter, after all. But the more he tried to dismiss it, the more he caught himself noticing the quiet presence Emily carried in the house, the way she moved, the subtle energy she brought into a room. The next weekend, Anna suggested a family walk through the nearby woods. The three of them went together, leaves crunching under their feet, the crisp air smelling of pine. At one point, Anna walked ahead, leaving Michael and Emily slightly behind. She kicked a pebble along the path, her hands tucked into her jacket pockets. "You know," she said quietly, "I didn't think you'd last this long." Michael glanced at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" She gave a small shrug. "Most people get tired of this place. Of us." He stopped walking. "Emily, I'm not most people." She looked up at him then, her eyes locking on his. There was no sarcasm, no defense in her expression, only a soft searching, as though she was testing the weight of his words. For a long moment, they stood like that, until Anna called from up the path. Emily smiled quickly and hurried ahead, leaving Michael with the echo of his own voice in the cool forest air. That night, he realized something undeniable. The distance between them was no longer just about age or circumstance. It was becoming something else, something harder to define and even harder to ignore. The rhythm of autumn settled in long evenings, early darkness, the house filled with the faint scent of candles Anna loved to light. Michael tried to focus on work, but whenever he returned home, he felt a peculiar anticipation he didn't want to name. Emily had grown less distant since that evening in the kitchen. She spoke to him more often now, asked casual questions about his day, or even teased him lightly in ways she never had before. Anna noticed and seemed glad, unaware of the subtle current flowing just beneath their words. One Friday evening, Anna was invited to a colleague's dinner. She insisted Michael join, but he claimed exhaustion and stayed home. Emily, too, stayed behind, claiming she had a paper to finish. The house was unusually quiet. Michael sat in the living room, half watching a documentary. After some time, Emily appeared in the doorway, holding a cup of tea. "You don't mind if I sit here, do you?" she asked. "Of course not." She curled up in the armchair opposite him, her hair loose, sweater sleeves falling over her hands. For a while, neither spoke, letting the muted voice from the TV fill the silence. Then Emily asked softly, "Do you ever feel out of place here?" Michael turned to her. "Sometimes." "Why?" She shrugged, staring into her cup. "This house, it still feels like my dad's sometimes. Like you're stepping into a space that wasn't really made for you." Her honesty caught him off guard. He leaned forward. "I know it must be strange for you, me being here." Emily's eyes lifted, meeting his. "It's not strange. Just different. I guess I'm still figuring out what you mean to me." The words hung between them, heavier than they should have been. Michael cleared his throat, forcing a smile. "Well, I hope I'm at least not the villain in your story." That earned him a quiet laugh. "No, not a villain." The evening stretched on. The documentary ended, replaced by silence. Emily didn't leave. Instead, she asked questions about his past, his college years, his travels, the choices that led him here. She listened with an attentiveness that felt unusual for her age, her gaze lingering longer than necessary. At one point, as he spoke, she shifted in her chair, tucking her legs beneath her. The movement was small, innocent even, but Michael noticed how it drew his attention in ways he wished it wouldn't. He forced himself to look away, to stand and collect the empty mugs. But when he passed her, she said quietly, "You don't have to act so careful all the time." He stopped, glancing down at her. "What do you mean?" Emily gave him a half smile. "You're always so cautious around me. Like you're afraid of saying the wrong thing." Michael hesitated, then admitted, "Maybe I am. I don't want to cross a line." She tilted her head, studying him. "Sometimes lines aren't where we think they are." Her words sent a chill through him, not fear, but something else, sharper, more dangerous. He placed the mugs in the sink and lingered in the kitchen, breathing deeply, trying to steady himself. When he returned, Emily had turned off the lamp, leaving only the glow of the television screen. She was curled under a blanket now, her face half-lit by the flickering light. "Good night," he said, his voice low. Emily's eyes followed him as he moved toward the stairs. "Good night, Michael." Her tone was simple, but it carried something unspoken. Something that echoed in his mind long after he closed his bedroom door. That night, Michael lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He told himself nothing had happened because truly nothing had. And yet, the silence between them had changed shape again, becoming heavier, more alive, like a fire hidden under ash. He didn't know where it would lead, but he knew it was there, waiting. The days grew colder. Frost began to cling to the grass in the mornings, and every evening the windows fogged from the warmth inside the house. Michael found himself paying closer attention to the little details, the sound of Emily's footsteps on the stairs, the way she hummed to herself when she cooked, the faint smell of her perfume drifting in the hallway. None of it should have mattered, but it did. One Saturday, Anna left early to visit her sister, planning to spend the whole day there. Michael offered to drive, but she insisted she would be fine. By noon, only he and Emily were left in the house. He spent the first hour in his study, trying to immerse himself in paperwork. But concentration slipped away. Eventually, he heard music from the living room, soft, modern, a steady rhythm with quiet vocals. Curious, he went downstairs. Emily was there, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a sketchbook in her lap. Pencils and erasers were scattered around her. She looked up briefly, then back to her page. "Didn't know you draw," Michael said. "It's just a hobby." She glanced at him again, as though deciding whether to show him. Then she turned the book slightly. On the page was a half-finished sketch of the backyard, the bare trees bending against the autumn wind. "That's good," Michael said honestly. "Better than I could ever do." Emily smiled faintly. "You say that about everything I try." "Because it's true." For a moment, their eyes held, and then Emily looked back to her drawing. "You don't have to flatter me. I'm not a little girl." The way she said it, quiet, steady, deliberate, hung in the air longer than it should have. Michael sat down on the couch nearby, watching her pencil move across the page. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It felt like a language of its own. At some point, Emily put her sketchbook aside and stood. "I'm making tea. Want some?" "Sure," he replied. She disappeared into the kitchen. He heard the soft clink of mugs, the kettle starting to hum. When she returned, She handed him a cup and sat on the arm of the couch rather than the chair. Close, but not too close. They sipped quietly. On the TV, muted images of a travel show flickered sunlit streets. Crowded markets, voices he couldn't hear. "Have you ever wanted to just leave?" Emily asked suddenly. "Leave?" She nodded. "This town. This house. Everything." Michael thought for a moment. "Sometimes. But leaving doesn't always mean escaping. Sometimes it just means running from yourself." Emily tilted her head, studying him. "And what are you running from?" The question was too direct. Michael shifted in his seat. "Nothing I can't handle." Her lips curved into a knowing smile, but she didn't press. Instead, she pulled the blanket from the back of the couch and draped it loosely over her legs, settling into the corner near him. The hours passed quietly. They spoke in fragments, silences stretching between words. At times, Michael forgot where one conversation ended and another began. When evening came, rain started again, soft at first, then heavier, drumming against the roof. The sound filled the room, wrapping them in a cocoon. Emily leaned her head against the back of the couch, her eyes half closed. "I like nights like this," she murmured. "They feel secret." Michael's chest tightened. "Secret?" She nodded lazily. "Like the world outside doesn't exist. Just this." Her words lingered in the dim room, louder than the rain. Michael looked at her, at the way the lamplight touched her face, at the faint curve of her smile, and for a dangerous heartbeat, he almost forgot himself. But then Anna's car pulled into the driveway, headlights cutting briefly across the window. Emily sat up quickly, tucking the blanket closer, while Michael stood and set his empty cup on the table. When Anna entered, the spell broke. She laughed about her sister's endless stories, kissed Michael on the cheek, and asked about their day. Everything fell back into place, the quiet, charged moments buried under ordinary conversation. And yet, later that night, as Michael lay awake once more, he realized that what frightened him most wasn't what had happened, it was how much he wanted it to happen again. Winter arrived suddenly. The first snow settled on rooftops and streets, covering the traces of autumn. The house grew even quieter, as if every wall guarded the unspoken words and lingering glances within it. Michael found himself realizing that time with Emily had become something different. Not because of great conversations, but because the silences between them were no longer empty, they were full. One evening, while Anna worked late, Michael sat in his study pretending to go through papers. But his thoughts wandered back to the sound of Emily's laughter in the living room. She was on the phone, her voice soft, free. He wasn't listening to the words, only to the tones, like music impossible to ignore. Later, when she stepped into his study, just to ask if he wanted tea, that same quiet tension returned. "You're always so serious," she teased, smiling. "Maybe someone has to be," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Emily looked at him a moment longer than necessary. Then she shrugged and left. It was in these small things that Michael understood. Whatever existed between them would never be spoken aloud. Not out of fear, not because of rules, but because its strength lay in remaining unspoken. Christmas came. Anna decorated the house with lights, the scent of cinnamon and oranges filling the air. Emily helped with the tree, her laughter bright and unguarded. Michael watched them, his wife, his stepdaughter, and felt an unexpected calm. In that moment, everything was right: the house, the warmth, the family. He knew the invisible lines between him and Emily would remain uncrossed. And perhaps that was why their connection would last quiet, deep, living in the shadows where no words were needed. Across the glow of the Christmas lights, Emily caught his gaze. She smiled barely, almost secretly. In her eyes was everything: recognition, understanding, and a silent promise that what they shared would stay within them, forever unspoken. And Michael returned the smile. Music played softly, snow drifted outside, and life continued steady, ordinary, visible to everyone. Yet somewhere, deep within memory, another life remained, a life of pauses, glances, and things never said. Silent, hidden, eternal.